Some nights stay with you forever. No matter how many years pass, they wait, like damp air clinging to a window refusing to clear. For me, it's the night I realized my best friend wasn't who I thought she was. It was the summer of 2016 and the rain hadn't stopped for days. Our small Oregon town always felt quiet, but when it rained, it turned into something else entirely. Muffled, distant, like sound itself got tired of trying. I was 19 then, still figuring out life, sharing a rental house near campus, taking boring classes and pretending I was fine. My best friend Jenna was the only familiar piece of my old life. We'd met in 7th grade. 2 shy girls in oversized raincoats, waiting at the same bus stop. Over the years, we'd become inseparable. We studied together, skipped classes together, even talked about moving to Seattle after college. But if there was one thing about Jenna, it was this. She never let anyone in her house beyond the living room. She'd joke about it. "That part's haunted," she'd say, smiling too easily. But her eyes always flicked toward the end of the hallway, where the door with the brass knob sat, the one she said was off limits. I didn't question it much. Everyone had their secrets. Until that night. The storm started around sunset. By midnight, power was out across most of town. My roommate was gone for the weekend and my flashlight app was dying with my phone. So out of habit, I texted Jenna. "You up? Lights out everywhere." She replied right away. "Yeah, come over." Just knocked twice. Her street looked darker than usual when I got there. Rain was pouring so thick it blurred the world into gray streaks. Her house sat at the corner. Lights out except for one flickering candle by the window. She opened the door before I even knocked. "Hey," she said, smiling faintly. "Hey yourself. Looks like the end of the world out there." "Yeah, come in." Inside, the air smelled damp, metallic and like old pipes and something faintly sweet rotting underneath. She had candles lit in a few corners, their light stretching shadows across the walls. The sound of rain against the roof was relentless. We sat on her couch, sipping instant coffee she'd made on a gas stove. The flicker of candlelight made her face look older somehow. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah, just tired. Haven't been sleeping much." Something about her voice felt different, slower, as if she was choosing every word carefully. I tried to joke. "So any ghosts in your haunted room tonight?" Her smile froze. "Don't joke about that." "Whoa, sorry. I didn't mean..." She shook her head. "It's fine, just not tonight, okay?" The air grew thick with silence. I stared at the hallway, the same narrow space that always felt darker than the rest of the house. The brass-knobbed door was now sealed with a new heavy latch. After a while, I excused myself to the bathroom. But when I came back, Jenna was gone. The candle still burned, shadows dancing on the walls. The house felt heavier, like someone else was breathing inside it. "Jenna?" I called out. No answer. Then a faint sound, a movement, slow scraping that came from the hallway, from that door. The latch looked like it had been replaced recently, polished, strong. I stepped closer, telling myself it was just the wind. But the air near that door felt colder, thicker, almost wet. "Jenna?" I said again, quieter. A low shuffle from behind the door. Not footsteps, more like something dragging. Then her voice came from the kitchen. "Don't go in there." I spun around. She was standing in the doorway, pale and trembling. Her hair was damp, even though she hadn't been outside. "You scared me," I said, forcing a laugh. "What's going on?" She looked toward the hallway and whispered, "You shouldn't have come tonight." Before I could ask why, the ceiling groaned. The kind of sound old houses make when something heavy moves above you. We both looked up, then back at each other. "You live alone, right?" I asked. She didn't answer. The latch on the door rattled once, then stopped. Rain drummed harder against the roof, thunder rolling far away. Jenna whispered, "It's awake now." "What is?" She pressed her hands to her ears. "It doesn't like when someone else is here. It listens. It remembers." She was shaking, tears pooling in her eyes. I didn't know if she was scared, sick, or losing her mind. I reached out to her. Hey, it's okay. Let's just go back to my place." She grabbed my wrist hard. "No, if we open the door now, it'll follow you. It only needs to see your face once." Then the lights and what little glow from the candles we had flickered as a gust of cold air swept through the room. The latch clicked. I froze. The door was opening. Just a few inches. Enough to see something move inside. It wasn't a person. The shape was wrong. hunched, too low, shifting like liquid shadow. And it was breathing. Slow, gurgling breaths, wet like lungs full of rainwater. Jenna screamed and slammed the door shut, locking it, her face twisted with something between terror and grief. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered again. "It's stronger when I'm not alone." I didn't wait to hear more. I ran. The rain outside felt like needles. I didn't even grab my umbrella. I just kept running until I reached my street. My hands were shaking so bad I dropped my keys twice trying to get inside. When I looked back, I swear I saw a flicker of light still burning in her window. The candle she'd left behind, and for half a second, a shadow passed in front of it. The next morning I texted her, no reply. By evening, her number was disconnected. 2 days later, her house was empty. Curtains gone. Mailbox open. For rent sign in the yard. The landlord told me they'd moved out overnight. Left everything behind and except that one door, which had been nailed shut from the inside. He said he'd tried to open it once. Couldn't, he told me, like it was sealed from both sides. A week later, another storm rolled in. The kind where thunder sounds like the sky cracking. I was home, lights flickering, when my phone buzzed at 2:14 a.m. No caller ID, just one text. "Don't let it in. It knows your name now." The number went dead after that. And sometimes when the rain hits my window just right, I hear it. That same wet breathing, soft and slow, like someone standing outside waiting to be let in. I've never opened the curtains to check, and I never will. There's something about late-night rain that makes memories crawl out of the dark. And for me, it always takes me back to Maya, my best friend since childhood, and the night I got a call from her phone, 2 weeks after she died. It's strange how grief twists time. One day you're at a funeral watching raindrops slide off umbrellas, and the next you're convincing yourself the phone on your nightstand didn't just light up with a name you shouldn't be seeing. But to explain what happened, I need to start before that night, before everything got blurred between what was real and what I wanted to believe. Maya and I grew up on the same street, spent summers riding bikes through puddles, and winters sharing secrets under blankets during storms that made the power flicker. She had this fearless energy, like nothing could touch her, until that night in October when everything did. We'd gone to a friend's birthday party at a cafe on the edge of town, the kind that stayed open late with neon signs and rain streaking down the glass. It was still raining when we left past midnight. I remember how the parking lot lights reflected off the puddles, turning everything ghostly white. Maya had been quiet all evening, staring at her phone like she was waiting for something. When I asked, she brushed it off. "Just weird texts," she said. "Probably spam." I didn't think much of it. We all get weird texts. She offered me a ride home, but halfway there, she missed a turn. "Shortcut," she said, though I didn't recognize the road. It was narrow, lined with trees heavy from the rain, their branches hanging low like they wanted to touch the car. We were laughing about something dumb when her phone buzzed again. She looked at the screen, went pale, and stopped the car right in the middle of the road. I remember the wipers moving back and forth, the sound of rain hitting the roof, and her whispering, "That's not possible." She showed me the phone. The message said, "Stop pretending you're alive." The contact name was Maya. You. I thought maybe someone had cloned her number, but the fear in her eyes told me she believed it. "It's sending from my own phone," she said, voice shaking. I checked. "It's me." The message came again, word for word. She threw the phone onto the dashboard like it had burned her. I told her we should go, that maybe it was some hacker prank, but she didn't move. Then the radio came on by itself. Static first, then faint breathing. Just breathing. Slow and wet, like someone was trying not to be heard. I reached over to turn it off, but the knob didn't respond. The air in the car felt heavy, almost humid, and the smell, like something damp left too long in a closed space, filled my throat. Then her phone buzzed again. One last text. "Look in the mirror." We both turned toward the rearview mirror at the same time. The reflection wasn't right. I saw us, but not us. The figures in the mirror looked older, skin pale, eyes too dark, like versions of us that hadn't slept in years. Maya screamed and slammed her hand against the glass, shattering the mirror completely. That's when the headlights behind us appeared, bright, blinding. I thought someone had stopped to help, but when I turned around, there was no car, just the glare cutting through the rain. The last thing I remember was her whispering, "Don't answer it next time." We crashed seconds later. I woke up in the hospital with a fractured arm and stitches along my jaw. Maya didn't wake up at all. They said she'd died on impact. Her phone was never found. For weeks I avoided driving at night, avoided the sound of rain on the windshield. Her mom asked me to help sort through her stuff, but I just couldn't. Then, 2 weeks after the funeral, the call came. It was past midnight again, rain tapping against my window, thunder rumbling far off. My phone lit up, vibrating across the nightstand. The name on the screen stopped my heart. Maya calling. I stared at it for a full 10 seconds before I picked up. Hello? Nothing. Just the same wet, shallow breathing I'd heard on the radio that night. Who is this? I said, voice shaking. Still no answer. Then a whisper. It's raining again. The line went dead. I sat there frozen until the phone buzzed again. This time a message. One single text. Don't drive tonight. The number disappeared right after. I tried to convince myself it was some glitch, that maybe her contact had been spoofed. But deep down I knew that voice. I didn't drive that night. The next morning I woke to news that a landslide had blocked the exact road Maya and I used to take home, the same one we crashed on. 2 cars had been swept into the river. If I'd gone out, I would have been one of them. I never got another call from her, but every October when the rain comes back, my phone still glitches at midnight. The screen lights up, battery drains, and sometimes, just for a second, I see her name flicker like static before disappearing. I've changed phones twice, numbers 3 times, but it doesn't matter. The signal always finds me, and whenever I drive past that stretch of road, I swear I hear a phone ringing faintly beneath the sound of the rain, somewhere deep under the water, still waiting for someone to pick up. It's strange how friendship can turn into something you can't explain, something that lingers even after the person is gone. I used to think I understood grief until Lila died, and I started hearing her voice through my bedroom door. It began 3 months after her funeral, though if I'm honest, the unease started much earlier. Lila and I had been roommates in college, inseparable since our first semester, 2 girls against the world, surviving bad professors, ramen dinners, and endless rainstorms in our leaky dorm. She was loud, funny, full of life, the kind of person who made you forget how cold the world could be. But that last semester, something changed in her. She started talking to herself when she thought I was asleep, whispering late at night in a low, soft tone. At first, I figured she was on the phone. Then I realized she wasn't holding one. Once I asked who she was talking to, and she smiled without meeting my eyes. No one, just practicing something. After that, the whispers got louder. Sometimes I'd wake to find her sitting cross-legged in the dark, facing the wall, murmuring words I didn't recognize. She'd stop when I moved, then crawl into bed like nothing had happened. The rain never stopped that spring. It fell for weeks, steady and endless, coating everything in gray. I thought the weather was getting to her. She told me once, rain makes it easier for them to come through. I laughed it off, but she didn't. A month later, I came home from class to find her gone. Her phone on the desk, laptop open, coffee still warm. The only thing missing was the small notebook she always kept under her pillow. I tried calling her, but her number went straight to voicemail. Her parents filed a report. The police searched for days, but there was no trace, no signs of struggle, no goodbye, nothing. It was like she'd dissolved into the rain itself. They drained the lake near campus after a week. They never told me what they found, but the looks on the officers' faces said enough. The dorm emptied soon after. I moved back to my childhood home thinking that would help. It didn't. The first night I slept in my old room, I woke up around 2:30 a.m. to a soft knock on my door. 3 slow taps. I thought it was my mom, but when I called out, no one answered. The hallway light was off, and the air smelled faintly like the lavender shampoo Lila used. I told myself it was a dream and went back to bed. The next night it happened again. 3 knocks, then silence. I didn't open the door. I couldn't. The third night it rained so hard I could barely hear myself think. I put in earbuds and tried to sleep, but sometime after midnight, I woke to the sound of my doorknob turning. Just a small click like someone testing it gently. My heart nearly stopped. I whispered, "Who's there?" And a voice whispered back, "It's just me." It was Lila, her voice soft and tired, like it always sounded when she'd been crying. I froze, the knob twisted again. "You left me in the rain," she said. I jumped up, shouting her name, but there was no reply. My mom ran in moments later asking what was wrong. But when she flipped on the light, the knob was still. Everything was quiet except the storm outside. I barely slept after that. I told myself it was my brain clinging to her memory, creating things that weren't there. But then the messages started. Text from an unknown number. All at 2:30 a.m., the first said, "It's cold." The second, "I can hear the rain from here." The third one stopped my heart. "Don't open your door tonight." I deleted them, blocked the number, but every night at 2:30, I'd still wake up seconds before the knocks began. 3 soft taps, always the same. I started sleeping with my light on. My mom thought I was losing it, so I stopped telling her about it. Then one night it got worse. The rain was hammering the roof, wind shaking the windows. I'd fallen asleep on the couch, and sometime past 2:30, I heard the knock again. This time not on my bedroom door, but on the front door. 3 slow taps. I stood up, shaking, heart racing. The house was dark except for the blue glow of the streetlight through the curtains. "Lila?" I whispered before I could stop myself. The knock stopped. Then came the whisper, barely audible over the storm. "Let me in." "I'm so tired," it was her voice, but distorted, like it was coming from underwater. My legs felt like ice. I stepped closer, and for a moment, I saw a shadow under the door, a pair of feet standing in the puddle outside. I backed away slowly, whispering no over and over. The voice got closer. "You don't have to be afraid anymore. It's better here." My phone buzzed behind me. One new message from an unknown number. "Don't open it. It's not her." I froze, staring at the phone, then at the door. The knob turned once. I screamed for my mom. When she came running, the shadow was gone. The porch was empty except for rain. The next morning, muddy footprints led from the porch to my bedroom window. Small and bare, stopping just beneath the glass. I moved out that week. I don't sleep in rooms with doors facing hallways anymore. Every time it rains, I leave the lights on and play music loud enough to drown out any knocking. But sometimes, when the storm is heavy enough and the wind carries sound through the cracks, I still hear her whisper my name from the other side of the door. Soft, patient, like she's still waiting for me to let her in. When I first signed the lease for the little flat on Birch Street, I told myself I just needed 4 walls and a cheap kettle. Nothing that required memories or explanations. Breakup baggage fits in boxes, right? The building was older than the neighborhood, all sagging cornices and water-stained bricks. And the month I moved in, the rain had a stubbornness to it, like someone kept replaying the same wet day. The landlord was a man who talked in half sentences and avoided the second-floor closet. He shrugged when I asked about it and said only that the place came with a bit of history. That night, unpacking plates by the window with rain like a finger tapping on the glass, I found the box shoved behind a shelf, taped, yellowed, and labeled in a hand that had once been careful enough to warn, "Do not open." I should have left it sealed. Instead, curiosity, lonely, dumb human, won. The photographs inside felt like a room full of eyes. A single woman in frame after frame, always the same faint smile, always standing somewhere. I slowly recognized as room after room that might have been mine. At first I convinced myself it was just some forgotten art project, a former tenant's experiment in repetition or mood, something harmless. But the more I looked, the harder that lie became to believe. The dates on the back of each photograph spanned decades. 1987, 1993, 2001, 2010, yet the woman never aged. Same pale face, same black hair tucked behind one ear, same distant gaze that never quite met the lens. And in the most recent picture, her surroundings were unmistakable. The same window pattern as mine, the same chipped cabinet handle, even the same small crack above the light switch. My stomach tightened. I went through the rest of the box and found one last photograph with no date at. All was the woman standing in front of a door that was identical to mine, rain streaking behind her. I felt my pulse in my throat. I turned the picture over and noticed, faintly etched in pencil, the words, "She waits for the right tenant." The room felt smaller suddenly, the air thicker. I shoved the box back into the closet, closed the door, and told myself I was imagining things. But that night, while half asleep, I heard something that didn't sound like the pipes or the rain, a soft mechanical click, followed by the faintest flicker of light beneath the closet door. The next morning, I woke to find one of the photographs lying on my kitchen counter. I hadn't touched that box since the night before. This photo was new, fresh, edges still glossy, showing my kitchen exactly as it looked at that moment. The chipped mug beside the sink, the half-eaten toast I'd left before bed, even the faint reflection of my own silhouette in the window. But in the corner of the frame stood the woman, half in shadow, her faint smile unchanged. My hands shook so badly the photo slipped to the floor. I tore it in half and threw it into the trash. But later, when I checked, it was back on the counter, whole again. I stopped sleeping. Every night brought that same faint click, sometimes from the hallway, sometimes closer, once from right beside the bed. I'd jolt awake to find the air colder, the smell of damp earth heavy around me. Once, when I turned on my phone flashlight to check, I caught a reflection in the mirror, a pale outline behind me that vanished when I turned. By the third night, I'd pushed a chair against the closet door. But when I woke before dawn, the chair was moved aside, the door slightly open. Another photo waited on my pillow. This time, the woman wasn't far away. She was standing at the foot of my bed, her head tilted slightly, eyes fixed on me like she'd finally found what she was waiting for. I didn't go to work the next day. I just sat in the living room, blinds drawn, every light on, staring at the closet door as if keeping it in sight might somehow keep me safe. The rain outside hadn't stopped. It came in steady sheets, turning the windows into shifting mirrors. I tried calling the landlord, but the number went straight to voicemail. When I finally worked up the courage to check the closet again, the box was gone. The space where it had been was empty except for one photo taped to the back wall, an image of me sitting exactly where I was now on the couch, staring toward the closet. I dropped my phone trying to call for help. The sound that came next wasn't the camera this time. It was footsteps, soft but deliberate, coming from the hallway. I backed into the corner, whispering, "Please stop," to no one. To her, to whatever this was. The air turned icy. My breath came out in clouds. The light flickered once, twice, then went out. The rain paused for half a second, total silence, and in that silence, I heard a voice, faint and close, whispering right beside my ear, "Smile." The flash blinded me. I stumbled, grabbed the lamp and turned it back on, but the room was empty again. Only the faint smell of wet clothes lingered. My phone buzzed on the floor. The screen lit up with a new image notification. No number, no message. Just one picture. Me, sitting in the corner, eyes wide, mouth half open, the moment right after the flash. Behind me, her hand resting gently on my shoulder. I moved out that night. Left everything, the dishes, the clothes, even the keys still in the lock. I don't remember driving. I only remember the blur of wet roads and the sound of my heartbeat, louder than the rain. I crashed on a friend's couch across town and didn't tell her why. Just said the apartment had bad wiring and I needed a place to stay. For a week, things were quiet. No photos, no clicking, no shadows shifting in the corners. I started to believe I'd escaped it. Then on the 7th morning, a small padded envelope arrived at my friend's door with no return address. Inside was a single photograph wrapped in damp paper. It was me, asleep on her couch, the exact position I'd been in that night. And behind me, faint but unmistakable, she was there, standing by the window, face blurred by rain but smile perfectly clear. I dropped it and ran outside, half hoping it was some cruel prank. But no one was there, just the steady drizzle soaking the empty street. I never went back to Birch Street. I changed my number, moved again, even left town for a while. But sometimes when it rains, I still hear that soft mechanical click behind me. Once, while passing a photo booth at a fair, the flash went off even though no one was inside. The strip that printed showed 3 empty frames, and then in the 4th, her face, wet hair, faint smile, eyes fixed on the camera as if she knew exactly where I'd be looking. I threw it away, but it didn't matter. That night my phone buzzed again. A message with no words, just an image. My reflection in the dark window. Her silhouette standing behind me, camera raised, waiting for me to smile. When I first met Emma, she was the quiet kind of person who made silence feel like company instead of emptiness. We'd become friends during freshman year, paired for a film project neither of us wanted to do, and somehow the late nights, editing in her basement, turned into weekends spent at her house, watching old horror movies and pretending we weren't scared. Emma lived at the end of a long, winding road that led to an old white house her family had owned for generations. It was always raining out there, the kind that blurred the forest behind the house into gray watercolor shapes. Her mom was kind but distant. Her dad worked nights, and most of the time it felt like the place belonged just to us. The house itself had a strange personality. Every hallway hummed, every door creaked, and somewhere deep inside, something dripped endlessly even when the rain stopped. I'd always joked that if ghosts were real, they'd be bored living anywhere else. Emma never laughed at that. Once, while we were sitting on her floor, surrounded by half-finished popcorn and flickering light from the TV, she said quietly, "They wouldn't be bored. They'd just be lonely." I thought it was one of her poetic moods. Now I know it was something closer to the truth. It started small, the kind of things you notice but talk yourself out of. A light left on in the hallway even though we'd just turned it off. A door upstairs clicking shut when there was no draft. Sometimes when I stayed over too late, Emma would get distracted mid-sentence, tilting her head as if listening to something I couldn't hear. Then she'd smile again and change the subject. I remember one night in particular. The rain was louder than usual, drumming against the windows like impatient fingers. We were halfway through a movie when the basement lights flickered and went out. I reached for my phone flashlight, but Emma stopped me. "Don't," she said softly. "They don't like bright light." I laughed, thinking she was joking, but her face didn't move. "Who?" I asked. She stared toward the dark stairwell. "The ones who stay when everyone else leaves." My stomach went cold. The lights came back on a second later, and she just smiled at me like nothing had happened. I told myself she'd been trying to scare me, maybe testing out lines for a story. But later, when I went upstairs to grab my bag, I saw something that made my breath catch. Down the hallway near her bedroom door, someone was standing in a pale shape, half seen in the flicker of the hall light. I blinked and it was gone. When I told Emma, she didn't ask what I saw. She just said quietly, "You shouldn't look at them too long. They don't like that." After that night, I tried not to stay past sunset. But somehow Emma always had a reason for me to. A new movie, a storm too heavy to drive through, a promise she'd feel better if I stayed just a little longer. And every time I agreed, something strange happened. Sometimes it was small, like hearing my own voice whisper my name from another room. Other times it was worse. Once, when I went to the bathroom upstairs, I found the mirror covered in fog, even though the room was cold. Words had been traced into the condensation. "Stay with us." My heart pounded so hard I couldn't breathe. I wiped it away fast and told myself it was Emma playing around. But when I came back down, she was sitting cross-legged on the couch, pale, staring at nothing. "They like you," she said without looking up. "They haven't liked anyone in a long time." The way she said they made my skin crawl. I tried to laugh it off, change the subject, anything, but she didn't respond. The TV flickered, and for half a second, I saw movement in the reflection behind us, a figure standing in the hallway, head tilted the same way. Emma tilted hers when she listened to something only she could hear. I spun around, nothing. But when I turned back, Emma was smiling faintly, eyes distant. "You'll get used to them," she said. I did. From that night on, whenever I went home, the rain followed me. I'd lie in bed and hear faint tapping on the windows, soft whispers that sounded like her voice saying my name over and over, like the house was still trying to call me back. By the time October came, I stopped going to Emma's house altogether. She'd text sometimes, short, strange messages that didn't sound like her. "It's quieter when you're here. They're asking for you. You shouldn't have left." I ignored them, told myself she needed help, that maybe her isolation had twisted into something darker. Then one night she called. I almost didn't answer, but guilt got the better of me. Her voice was faint, crackling through static. "Can you come over?" she whispered. "They're angry tonight." Before I could ask who they were, the line went dead. I told myself not to go, but by midnight I was driving through the rain, headlights cutting through mist. The house looked worse than I remembered. Shutter hanging loose, porch light flickering weakly. The front door was open. Inside, the air was thick and wet, smelling of old wood and earth. "Emma?" I called. The only answer was the drip, drip, drip somewhere deep in the house. I followed it upstairs, past walls lined with photos, dozens of them. Every frame showed the same thing, me and Emma, sitting together on the couch, in the kitchen by the window. Some were from angles I didn't recognize, taken from corners or behind doors. My hands trembled. I reached her bedroom, pushed the door open. She was sitting on the floor facing the wall, whispering to someone I couldn't see. When she turned, her eyes looked wrong. Dark, glassy, almost hollow. "They said you'd come back," she murmured. And from behind her something moved. Slow, deliberate, too tall to be human. The air turned freezing. I stumbled backward, heart hammering, as shadows poured out from the corners of the room like smoke taking shape. Emma smiled faintly. "Now they don't have to be lonely anymore. Don't remember running out of that house. But I must have, because the next thing I recall is standing in the middle of the road, rain soaking through my jacket, headlights from some passing car flashing across me before fading into the dark. I didn't go back. Not that night, not ever. I told myself she'd follow me, call again, show up at school. But she didn't. The police said the house was empty when they checked. Only the smell of damp wood and mold, and walls covered in photographs that had warped from water damage. None of them showed Emma's face clearly, they said, and none of them showed mine, either, just two shadows sitting together where we used to be. They called it a case of abandonment, but I knew better. For weeks I'd wake in the middle of the night to hear the same sound as in her house, dripping water, steady and rhythmic, like someone pacing near my bed. Once, when I looked toward the window, I saw her standing outside in the rain, hair plastered to her face, her eyes reflecting the faint streetlight. She didn't move, didn't knock, just stood there until the thunder drowned her out. The next morning she was gone, but footprints led from the street right up to my window and nowhere else. I moved 2 towns over, blocked her number, tried to pretend she'd never existed, but the rain hasn't stopped since that night. And sometimes when it hits the glass just right, I can almost make out a voice in it, soft, familiar, whispering my name like she used to. And every time I hear it, I swear I catch a reflection behind me, 2 shapes sitting close together, the way we used to when it was just us in the dark. It's strange how sound travels over water. Some nights it carries laughter. Other nights it carries things you wish you hadn't heard. The night I heard Lily's voice for the last time, the lake was completely still, reflecting the rain and the glow from the old boathouse like a cracked mirror. We'd grown up spending summers at Harper Lake, a small stretch of water surrounded by pine, trees that always seemed to whisper even when there was no wind. Our families owned neighboring cabins, and for as long as I could remember, Lily had been part of every memory. I cared about the smell of sunscreen and pine needles, ghost stories told with flashlights under our chins, late-night swims we were never supposed to take. But last summer was different. She'd changed in a way I couldn't name, quieter, thinner, eyes darker than I remembered. She kept talking about the lake like it was alive, like it had moods. "It listens when you talk to it," she said once, watching the ripples fade. "You just have to say the right things." I laughed, told her she was getting too poetic for her own good. But when she didn't come back from her walk along the shore that night, when all that was left was her phone buzzing with a missed call and her footprints, ending at the water's edge, I stopped laughing. The police said she probably slipped. Rain, darkness, soft ground near the dock. But I knew Lily better than that. She was cautious, scared of deep water ever since she was little. Still, they dragged the lake for 3 days and found nothing, not even her jacket. By the 4th day, everyone had left except me. I couldn't stop replaying our last conversation, the way she'd looked at the lake before walking away. That night, I sat on the porch with her phone in my hand, scrolling through messages that didn't make sense, fragments like "it's almost ready" and "they said I can stay longer if I listen." I tried to tell myself it was some weird metaphor she'd been writing for a class. Then at 3:12 a.m., the phone lit up. Lily, calling. My throat closed. I answered, shaking so hard I nearly dropped it. For a few seconds, there was only static. Then her voice, faint, like she was speaking underwater. "You shouldn't have stayed." I whispered her name, again and again until the line cut out. When I looked at the screen, the call timer read exactly 1:13. The next morning, I went down to the dock. Rain had started again, soft and cold. Near the edge, carved into the wood in thin, uneven letters were the words "I listened too long." I backed away slowly, every sound of the rain, suddenly feeling like it was whispering something I couldn't quite understand. After that, the lake never sounded the same. Every night the rain would start at the same hour Lily had called, and the water would churn even when there was no wind. I told myself I was grieving, that I was hearing patterns in nothing. But then I started finding things. Her bracelet on the porch railing, still wet as if freshly pulled from the lake. A photograph of the two of us, edges soaked, lying on my doorstep even though I'd never brought it here. I tried to throw them away, but by morning they'd be back in the same spot, dripping lake water onto the floorboards. On the 6th night, I dreamed I was standing at the edge of the dock and she was in the water. Eyes open, hair floating around her face. She looked alive but wrong. Her skin too pale, her smile too still. She raised a hand and whispered, "Come listen." I woke up gasping, the sound of rain so heavy it drowned everything else. My phone buzzed again. Lily calling. This time I didn't answer. But the ringtone didn't stop until I threw the phone across the room. When I picked it up again, the screen was cracked, the call still active, and from the speaker came the faint sound of splashing. Measured, slow, like footsteps wading closer through the water. I hung up, pulled the battery out, and sat shaking until morning. But even with the phone dead, I could still hear the echo of her voice, soft and low, coming from somewhere outside, calling my name like she was standing just beneath the dock. By the 7th night, I'd stopped pretending any of it was normal. I packed my bags, ready to leave the lake for good. But something in me, curiosity, guilt, maybe love, made me walk down to the dock one last time. The rain was softer that night, more like a whisper than a storm. The air heavy with that strange, metallic smell water sometimes, as before it swallows something. The surface was unnaturally calm. No ripples, just a mirror of the clouds above. I called her name once quietly, and immediately wished I hadn't. The water shivered, then went still again. I turned to go, but my phone, which I hadn't touched since breaking it, buzzed in my pocket. The screen was dark except for a single notification. Voicemail from Lily. Against every instinct I played it. At first only rain. Then her voice, clear this time, whispering, "It's not deep here anymore. You could walk if you wanted." A cold wind swept across the dock, and for a moment, I swore I saw her standing waist-deep in the lake, head tilted, eyes bright with something that wasn't entirely human. "Please," she said, holding out a hand. "It's so quiet down here. Just listen." The air pressure dropped. The water began to pull, slow but deliberate, like unseen hands tugging at the dock supports. My body moved before my mind did, one step forward, then another. Her reflection smiled. And the rain around me stopped, falling as if the world was waiting to see if I'd take the final step. That's when I heard my own voice from behind me, soft and hoarse, whispering into the rain, "Don't listen." I turned, but there was no one there, only the echo of myself, fading into the sound of the water. I don't remember getting off that dock. The next thing I knew, it was morning. The rain had stopped, and I was lying on the wet grass near the tree line, clothes soaked through, phone still clutched in my hand. The lake was perfectly still again. No sign of movement, no footprints, nothing disturbed. I told myself I'd imagined it all, that grief had filled in the blanks where logic couldn't reach. I drove away that same day, didn't even look in the rearview mirror. But some things don't stay buried, especially when the water remembers. A week later, I started getting calls again, blocked numbers, always at 3:12 a.m. Sometimes I'd answer and hear only rain. Other times I'd hear faint breathing, slow and steady, like someone on the edge of sleep. Last night was different. When I answered, it wasn't her voice. It was mine, whispering the same words she'd said by the dock. "It's not deep here anymore. You could walk if you wanted." I dropped the phone, but the sound didn't stop. It was coming from outside. I went to the window and saw the reflection of the lake and the rain pooling on the glass. Faint but unmistakable. For a second, the reflection rippled, and in it, she stood right behind me, smiling softly, water streaming from her hair, whispering, "See? You finally listened." This morning, the phone rang one last time, but I didn't answer. I just stared at the screen until it went dark. The voicemail icon blinked once, then disappeared. And now, as the rain begins again, I can hear her faintly, somewhere far off, beneath the sound of thunder, calling my name from the water, patient, certain, as if she knows I'll come back to listen.